Hey, I'm here riding in the city of Vancouver, and Vancouver is really turning into a great bike city. The protected bike lanes are cropping up everywhere. Let's just turn around the corner here and go that way. Maybe I spoke too soon. If you look at the cycling map like this one of pretty much any city, it can look very impressive. All of these green lines means you can ride your bike in all kinds of places. Yeah, but when you look closer, things kind of change. Things like this, bike lanes that just disappear on you, a gap in the network, a lane that just abandons you out onto the street. If you've ever ridden a bike in the city, you've no doubt had this experience. You're riding on a nice bike lane and suddenly it's gone, even though you know there are good bike lanes just over there, but you just can't seem to reach it. This is a gap in the bike lane network, and today I'm going hunting for gaps to see what impact they really have. Let's call this the hunt for the weakest link. So this gap I encountered at the start of this video is a good place to start because it's an example of the danger of having gaps in your network. So there are great bike lanes in that direction, great bike lanes in that direction. There are good bike lanes a few blocks over that way, but this busy 6-lane road right here, there is nothing. And it's not just that it looks safe. The research says that these transition points are the site of a disproportionate number of cycling injuries. So gaps like this are not just inconvenient or annoying, they're dangerous. I'm not just rolling through the city here looking for problems, although that does sound like a weird kind of fun. And speaking of weird fun, thanks for watching. This is Shifter, a channel about urban cycling and bike commuting. Please consider subscribing, becoming a member, or checking out my course on bike commuting. It's got everything you need to get you started, and it's got a bunch of new content on e-bikes and cargo bikes and a lower priced starter pack. This hunt for the weakest link idea came from an initiative of the local bike advocacy group. They've created a map of the worst gaps in Vancouver's bike network as a way of advocating to help get those gaps filled.
Gaps are kind of one of the main reasons why a bike lane may be underused or ignored entirely. So people want to use lanes that are protected, connected, and they take them to places where they actually want to go. So that would be like schools or transit hubs or commercial areas. If a lane meets that criteria, then people are going to ride it. But if a lane is disconnected, it's fragmented, there's significant gaps throughout the infrastructure, people are going to avoid it.
Rihanna said that only 50% of Vancouver's bike routes are considered comfortable for most people. As a result, Hub has a local group of volunteers in 10 different areas of the city who have identified and prioritized gaps in the network, and the map they've created is being used to advocate governments to fix them. Which is great, but what impact do these bike lane gaps have in real life? I actually asked Rihanna if there are any gaps that she has to deal with in her life.
It sounds like a crazy ex story or something. Do you have a gap in your life that drives you crazy?
Perhaps I could have worded the question better. And she had a doozy, and so I set off on a hunt to find Rihanna's gap for myself. Okay, this one really illustrates the whole weakest link problem. She lives in a different jurisdiction across the water. There's a big bridge with a decent bike lane that gets across towards Vancouver. The bike lane just slowly deteriorates until it just vanishes.
This gap drives me nuts. It is a very narrow, heavy traffic corridor with one lane in each direction. You have to ride within traffic, and you still have the risk of getting doored on the right side. I'd say the 5 years that I've done that route regularly, I've maybe seen people bike on the road 3 times. It's notorious for sidewalk riding.
So this totally illustrates this missing link argument. This gap is awful. It's harrowing. It's a busy street. I rode it. I immediately wanted to get off of it and onto the sidewalk, which is technically illegal, but I think that's probably how most people ride there because they want to stay alive. And I'd say that gap is enough to prevent people from wanting to ride at all. There's even a sign that tells you to get off and walk, which just adds insult to injury. Okay, let's move on and find another gap on Hub's list. And this one's a different kind of problem. It shows that gaps aren't just something that creates safety problems, although they absolutely do. It also shows that a gap in the network can just be a missed opportunity. So there are good bike routes all around here, including a really great greenway just a few blocks away, but nothing on this street. And that matters because this is the street where everybody wants to go. This is the commercial street. It's literally Commercial Drive is the name of it. This is where all the shops are. This is where everybody wants to go. But when there's no bike lane on a street like this, you're missing out on the benefits that bike lanes can bring. Slowing traffic down, making the street less hostile, offering opportunity for business owners to have all those new customers. All this begs the question, how do these gaps come to be? Like, what creates them? Well, there can be lots of reasons. Either funding limits to projects sometimes to just end. There can be competing jurisdictions that don't complete a network. There could be private interests where a private land developer puts up a building and then wants to attract tenants, so they build a bike lane in front of it, but there's no connection to it anywhere else. There are also urban plans that get trimmed back because of budget considerations. Like, this isn't a Vancouver problem, this is a city problem in general. You'll see this anywhere you go. In Seattle, I saw this. In Calgary, where I live, you see this all the time. You could replicate a hub-style map in any city, and you probably should, because I think it's a pretty effective tool. So yeah, there are lots of reasons that gaps can be present in a network, but those are kind of just excuses, because really all of these come down to decisions that we as cities make, and we can make them differently. Okay, one final project in our gap analysis. I can't believe I went this long in the video without saying gap analysis. Anyway, this one's a little bit different because this was a gap a few weeks ago, but it's not today. This project was just completed, and this shows one thing that I think is really important. So this is not a huge project. This is not a kilometers long bike lane that was added after a big political fight or a big budget. It's just a little connector through this part of this beach park. But what it does do is connect a residential area with a network of bike routes over there that get you into the city. And so it is used by a lot of people, and it's an important route. And even though this is not a huge project, I do think it's a good example of what researchers sometimes call the psychological bottleneck. Now, when people are thinking about bike commuting, they're not only thinking about the distance traveled and bike access, the safety of the entire route is something they factor into. And a little gap like that existed here that forced them into a route, they may have not been able to put their finger on it, but it made them feel uncomfortable enough that they may choose to not ride their bikes in those cases. One gap that makes people feel unsafe or uncomfortable, even if 99% of the route is safe, is sometimes enough to put people off of riding their bike. This is that psychological bottleneck. And there's good evidence to back this up too. One project in Bellingham, Washington that closed a gap led to a 32% increase in cyclists using that entire route. And another important point is that that little gap filler makes the investment in the rest of the network have more value. It's a return on the initial investment. And so, while it's important for cities to think about expanding their bike lane network and building more, what may be more important is that they take out their cycling map and start thinking about it as a real network and looking for those gaps to close them. One at a time, we can make our cities better for cycling. And this map is never getting folded up again. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.